Hello and welcome. Thanks for popping in. If you're new to the channel, please like and subscribe. If you find this content helpful, hit that notification bell and you'll be notified of the next video release. You can also check out my website, consultingninja.tech, where I've compiled loads of free resources available to browse. Feel free to comment below with any topics you'd like me to cover. With that said, we are going to be jumping into some TypeScript. I'm going to be using Vite to serve this locally and build this for myself. If you're not familiar with Vite, it is a new front-end tooling framework, which is way better than Create React App, and you definitely should use it. Check out the video in the upper right-hand corner of your screen to find out more on why. With that out of the way, let's jump right in. I'm going to do an npm create Vite at latest. And it's going to ask for a couple of things. I'm going to call this types. If you use a capital letter in your project name, you will also be prompted for a package name, since capital letters are not allowed in package names. And we are going to use React. Another benefit of Vite is that you can use it with many frameworks. And here is where this starts to get really cool. For this project in particular, it comes with built-in TypeScript support. No additional stuff necessary. So we can go into our new project folder and do an npm install to install our dependencies. All right, with that out of the way, let's fire up the dev server, npm run dev. npm run dev just runs Vite under the hood. And you can see that that's up and running. And in our browser, we have a very basic Vite application with a little counter that goes up. Inside of our IDE, or however you want to look at the project hierarchy, you can see that if you're familiar with other React applications, most of this is standard. The Vite config is now a TS file instead of a JS file, and there's an extra TS config here in JSON format, and then another one for Node and a regular tsconfig.json here. And this just sets some configuration options for TypeScript. Inside of our source, you can see in here that, again, this all looks, really standard, what you'd see in every other project. The one thing I'll point out here is this little definition file, and the extensions are TSX, and that just stands for TypeScript. It's TypeScript X, just like JavaScript X, right? So TSX is just the TypeScript equivalent of JSX. Everything that is available in JavaScript and everything that is available in JSX is also available in TypeScript and TSX accordingly. So why TypeScript then? What's the point? Well, the truth is there are really no performance benefits. Your application is not going to run faster if you switch to using TypeScript. It's pretty much all about development. The reason why TypeScript is popular is because of the way it allows collaboration between developers and subsequent development. So if I work on a project and I write it in TypeScript and then I leave a company, the next person that comes in is going to benefit greatly from TypeScript because it's basically describing every piece of data you use in your application. So let's look at our main.tsx. This is where your application is inserted into your HTML document. And you can see, everything looks the same here except for this tiny little snippet here. And this is a tiny little piece of TypeScript that is just saying what we're inserting in here is an HTML element. Inside of our app.tsx, again, you will see this file does not deviate at all from the JSX version. However, the difference comes in some of the IDE support for these files. So I'll put that on pause for just a sec, and let's go start creating a TypeScript file, and then I'm going to show you guys right now what that looks like and why you would use it. So if this were a enterprise size application, this JSX file or TSX file would not just be 35 lines, it would be many hundreds of lines of code, and the state and the controlling code, the setters and all of that stuff would not live in this file. It would live in a controller. So let's go create one, and I'll show you guys what that looks like. So inside of source, select new file, and let's just call this app controller.ts. Now don't put the X because we're not returning any X from this file. This is just going to be TypeScript. And in here, let's export const app controller, and that is going to be a function, and let's return an object. Okay? Now, here's where we start to get to where TypeScript is beneficial. So inside of these large applications, when you work for these large companies, you would have many JSX files and many controllers. In fact, there are a lot of components that on a single page you'd have tens or hundreds of components, and all of them would have separate controllers and separate JSX files. It's called the model view controller methodology, where you have a view, which in our case would be the JSX, it's what's displayed, and the controller is the thing that handles state and changing things. It's what runs the functions when you click or type. That's what handles all of the like programming logic stuff. And so that's what we're setting up here. So where this starts to be beneficial to use TypeScript is when I'm importing this controller into my other file, and I'll do that. Let's just save this and import app controller. And if I hover over, you'll see that it says, hey, there's an alias and there's this app controller and it's a function, and it's returning an object. Well, that's not very descriptive, right? Like that doesn't really tell us anything. Okay, it returns an object. It returns an object. That's great. So let's go into back to our controller one more time, and now let's add the TypeScript. So down here, type interface app state, and we're going to define app state, which is state, and that will be a number, and set state, which will be a react.dispatch, and that's going to take a set state action, and the parameter. So this is how you define a parameter in TypeScript. So set state action is a special kind of function, and it takes a parameter, and so we want to say what kind of parameter it takes, and it takes a number. And you'll see that the IDE imported React and set state action for me, otherwise we would have to import those here. And now after my on the right side of my function, if I put a colon and app state, now immediately in this file you already see a difference. This went from being okay to suddenly my IDE is telling me it's not okay. And the reason why is because we've defined exactly what this controller is returning. And so if I hover over this, it says, hey, this empty object that you're trying to return is missing the following properties from the type that you're saying that this returns, which is app state. And it's missing the following properties, right? Because we don't have anything in there. It's missing two. You've said that app state contains a property called state and a property called set state, and neither of them are there, and so you're missing both of those. So let's go ahead and define those. We can just grab out of this one the state, so cut that, paste it in here, and right here let's do a state, and that's going to equal count, and set state, and that's going to equal set count. And we need to import our use state there. And now you see all of our red squiggles go away. Everything looks good here. And if we go back to our JSX, let's remove the use state there. We're no longer using state directly in this file. And let's fire up our controller by typing const controller is equal to app controller, and we'll run that function here. Now everything inside of that controller is available here, and if I hover over, you can see this is being very specific as to what it is returning, right? It is returning app state. So that's pretty cool. And everything that we've defined there, we can return and get additional information about. So here where this says count, let's do controller.state and see how the IDE is filling it in for me already, because it knows exactly what it's expecting. And if you hover, it says, hey, this is a property, and it's coming from app state, which was returned to that controller, and it is a number. So this provides so much information for anyone that's coming into this file later on will be able to look at this and have all of that information available to them. So it just makes your development so much more meaningful and so much more logical when you can come into a file and know, because your IDE is telling you what is going on in each file and what each thing is. I'll also point out that, before I move along, that in here where we're firing up our controller, we can destructure this immediately too. So if we wanted to pull those pieces out right away and use them without the without having to access the variable, we can destructure like this and then get rid of that one. And then here we can just say state, and here we can say set state, and this will now be, we can copy this but just modify it slightly. So paste that in there, delete the old one, and then this is going to be state, and this will be state. And if I save this and we go back to our browser, you can see everything works exactly as it did before. There's no functional difference as far as the program or the application is concerned, but the difference is in what we as the developers are seeing here. The other thing I'd like to point out is, let's add a reset, okay? And let's do it the wrong way first. So up here, let's say const reset is assigned function, and the function is going to reset our state count. So once it hits a certain point, we're going to give the user the option to reset it back to 0. Let's add that now here. Let's say reset, and let's just say it's an anonymous function that doesn't return anything, because we're not returning anything from that function. And we'll say reset is assigned that function. So, I have these backwards. Let's so you can see here, that I've got that set. Now if I come into my controller and let's say I wanted to add another button, okay? And here when we do on click, we want to reset the state. So here instead we're going to do, let's destructure, pull out our reset, and it's right there available to us, and we'll do a reset. So that's pretty cool, right? So now if I save that and go back and I hit, I forgot to change the text on there. Reset. And I can reset that, no problems. If I did not have this wrapped, you would see this is going to try to point out to us. It's like, hey, wait a minute. So this is kind of a neat thing. We were assigning an anonymous function that's returning this, and so that didn't it didn't trigger. But if you take the anonymous function out, TypeScript will actually be like, wait a minute, something's off here, because onClick is supposed to be using a mouse event handler, and you're actually passing it a function that returns nothing. And so we could go back here and redefine this to be react.mouse handler event HTML button element. And then it's expecting the event. So we pass that in. So this is a way of this is TypeScript effort to be very specific in the kinds of functions that you are running, right? So now this is the way it should look. It says, now when you hover over this, it will show you this is a function that takes a HTML button element mouse event and returns nothing. And so we have to make sure that we pass that event to it, and be very clear in what it is that we're doing there. So that's another little tidbit. So this is some basic TypeScript. One last thing that I want to cover is there used to be a difference between interfaces and types. So if we said type app state and copy this and paste it in there, and then we'll just comment this one out, you will see literally nothing changes. So everything's good there, everything's good here, and everything still functions the same. And a long time ago, there was some sort of difference between types and interfaces. In 2022 or 2023, that doesn't seem to be the case anymore. And as far as I can tell, the real only difference is in how you are instantiating it, right? So type, you say type app state equals, and interface, you do leave off the equal sign. I think when people were using classes, there may have been some other differences. If you guys know, comment below. Best I can tell, that in 2023 there is no difference. So I hope that you guys find this video helpful. If you did, please like and subscribe. Comment below with any questions, comments, or feedback. Check out my website, consultingninja.tech, and have a great day.